above the seat, affording an alluring target for Havil. Chase, watching closely, saw the muscle along Havil's jaw contract, and then heard a tiny thump as the shot struck much harder than usual. The gentleman from Georgia jumped up, purple in the face, and trembled so that his newspaper rustled in his hand. "You hit me with something," he shouted, looking at Thatcher, for the reason, no doubt, that no one could associate Havil's sanctimonious expression with an untoward act. Thatcher looked up in great astonishment from the book in which he had been deeply interested. The byplay had passed unnoticed, so far as he was concerned. Besides, he was ignorant in Havil's genius in the shot shooting line, and he was a quiet fellow anyway, but quick in temper. "No, I didn't," he replied. The Southerner repeated his accusation. "No, I didn't, but I will jolt you one," returned Thatcher, with some heat. "Gentlemen, this is unseemly, especially in the presence of ladies," interposed Havil, rising with the dignity of one whose calling he appeared to represent. "Most unseemly. My dear sir, calm yourself. No one is throwing things at you. It is only your imagination. I have heard of such cases, and fortunately my study of medicine enables me to explain. Sometimes on a heated car a person's blood will rise to the brain, and, probably because of the motion, beat so as to produce the effect of being lightly struck. This is most often the case in persons whose hirsute decoration is slightly worn off in the middle, you know." The gentleman from the South sputtered in impotent rage, and stamped off toward the smoking car. "Dinner is served in the dining car ahead," called out a white clad waiter, and this announcement hurried off the passengers, leaving the car to the players, who had dined before boarding the train. Time lagged then. The porter lit the lights, for it was growing dark. 4 of the boys went into the smoker to play cards, and the others quieted down. After a while the passengers returned from the diner, and with them the porter, who began making up the berths. Chase watched with interest. "Let's turn in," said Enoch. "It's a long ride, and we'll be tired enough. Some of us must double up, and I'm glad we're skinny." Enoch boosted Chase into the upper berth and swung himself up. "Take off your outer clothes," said Enoch, "and be comfortable." Chase found it very snug up there, and he lay back listening to the smooth rush of the train as it sped on into the night. And before long he fell asleep. When he awakened the car was dark, though a faint gray light came through the window above him. He heard somebody walking softly down the aisle, and wondered who it could be. The steps stopped. Chase heard a sound at his feet, and rose to see an arm withdraw between the curtains. He promptly punched Enoch in the side. Enoch groaned and rolled over. "Some of the boys stealin' our shoes," whispered Chase. "It's the porter wantin' 'em to shine," said Enoch sleepily. Then he raised his head and listened. "Yep, it's the porter. I'm glad you woke me. Now listen, you'll hear somethin' funny. Cas always smuggles his bull pup into the car and hides him from the porter, and then puts him to sleep at the foot of the berth. That porter will be after Cas's shoes pretty soon." At intervals of every few minutes the porter's soft slipshod footsteps could be plainly heard. He was making toward the upper end of the car. "It's comin' to him," whispered Enoch, tensely. A loud, savage, gurgling growl burst out of the stillness, and then yells of terror. A terrific uproar followed. Bumpings and bangings of a heavy body in the aisle, sharp whacks and blows, steady, persistent growling, screams of fright from the awakened women, wild peals of delight from the ball players. Above all, the yelling of the porter. These sounds united to make a din that would have put a good sized menagerie to blush. It ended with the unlucky negro making his escape, and Cas coaxing his determined protector back into the berth. By and by silence once more reigned in the Pullman. Chase, having had his sleep, lay there as long as he could, and seeing it was broad daylight, decided he would crawl over Enoch and get out of the berth. By dint of some extraordinary exertions he got into his clothes and shoes. Climbing over Enoch was no difficult matter, though he did not accomplish it without awakening him. Then Chase parted the curtains, put his feet out, turned and grasped the curtain pole and balanced himself momentarily, preparatory to leaping down. The position was awkward for him, and as he loosened his knee hold he slipped and fell. One of his feet went down hard into a very large, soft substance that suddenly heaved like a swelling wave. As Chase rolled into the aisle, screams rent the air. "Help! Help! Thieves! Murder! Murder! Murder!" He had fallen on the fat woman in the lower berth. Chase saw a string of heads bobbing out of the curtains above and below, and heard a mighty clamor that made the former one shrink by comparison. The conductor, brakeman, and porter rushed in. Chase tried to explain, but what with the wails of the outraged lady and the howls of the players it was impossible to make himself heard. He went away and hid in the smoking car till the train stopped near Steubenville, where they were to change for Wheeling. When the Findlay team had all stepped off the Pullman, leaving the porter enriched and smiling his surprise, it was plain to Chase that he had risen in the regard of his fellow players. "Say, Chase, you're comin' on. You'll do, old man. It was the best ever." "The fire escape, my lad, is not in a lady's berth." "Go on. What are you givin' us? You kicked her in the stomach just by accident? Go on." Chase found it impossible to make the boys believe that he had fallen from the upper berth and had stepped on the poor lady unintentionally. The run along the Ohio to Wheeling was a beautiful one, which Chase thoroughly enjoyed. It was his first sight of a majestic river. During the ride Mac sat beside him and descanted on baseball in general and base running in particular. "Chase, a lad as fast as you ought to make all these catchers crawl under the bench. Now, listen to me. To get away quick is the secret. It's all in the start. Of course, depend on some coachin', but use your head. Don't take too big a lead off the base. Fool the pitcher and catcher. Make 'em think you ain't goin' down. Watch the pitcher and learn his motion. Then get your start just as he begins to move. Before he moves is the time, but it takes practice. Run like a deer, watch the baseman, and hit the dirt feet first and twist out of his way. But pick out the right time. Of course, when you get a hit and run sign, you've got to go. Don't take chances in a close game. I say don't as a rule. Sometimes a darin' steal wins the game, but there's time to take chances and times not to. Got that?" "Mac, where's the bat sack?" asked one of the players when they arrived at Wheeling. "Sure, I forgot it," said Mac blankly. "I'll have to buy some bats." "You ought to be in the bush league," said one. "How do you expect us to hit without our bats?" asked another. "Did you forget my sticks?" cried Thatcher, championship hitter utterly lost without his favorite bats. Player after player loomed up over the little manager and threatened him in a way that would have convinced outsiders he had actually stolen the bats. Mac threw up his hands in wordless disgust and climbed into the waiting bus. To Chase, riding to the hotel, having dinner, dressing for the game, and then a long bus ride out to the island grounds were details of further enjoyment. Findlay was a great drawing card, and the stands were crowded. Chase was surprised to hear players spoken of familiarly, as if they were members of the home team. "That's Castorious, the great pitcher." "There's old man Hicks, but say, he can catch some." "See, that's good old Enoch, the coacher." "Where's the new shortstop? The papers say he's a wonder." Chase moved out of hearing then and began picking over the new bats Mac had bought. Enoch came up and looked them over too. "Bum lot of sticks," he commented. "Say, Chase, Wheeling is a swell town to play in. The fans here like a good game and don't care who wins. The kids are bad, though. Look out for them. This is a good ground to hit on. You ought to be able to lambast a couple today. If Finnegan pitches, you wait for his slow ball and hit it over the fence." Findlay won the game 6-1. Castorious was invincible. Dude Thatcher hit one over the right field fence, and Chase hit one over the left field fence. The crowd cheered lustily after each of these long drives. When the players piled into the bus to ride back to the hotel, Chase saw them bundling up their heads in sweaters and soon divined the cause. His enlightenment came in the shape of a swiftly flying pebble that struck him in the head and made him see stars. As the bus rolled out of the grounds, Chase saw a long lane lined with small boys. "Whip up your horses, you yahoo!" yelled Cas. "We're off.